The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from the IEA. This is our second webinar in our series on modernising energy efficiency through digitalisation. Today's webinar is going to be looking at some insights and experiences from the German industry sector. My name is Joe Ritchie. I'm one of the energy analysts in the Energy Efficiency Division here at the IEA, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar. In terms of today's webinar, we're first of all going to start off with an introduction from Brian Motherway, who's the Head of Energy Efficiency here at the IEA. And then we're going to hear from Martin and Claire from DENEFF, who will be sharing some insights and experiences from the German industry sector. And after that, we'll then have a question and answer and also a discussion session. So it's really important that if you have any questions or you have any thoughts, that you let us know. We have over 370 people registered for today's webinar, so obviously some great interest out there, and obviously we welcome your thoughts and your interest in our work. In terms of actually asking questions later on in the session, you can do so by the attendee interface, as you can see here on your screen. If you would like to put a question to us, you just click on the small hand icon that you can see there, and then enter your question into the box, and then click send. We'll then collect all those questions, which you should give to us in English, and then we'll then provide those obviously to DENEFF and to ourselves for the discussion later in the day. So that's just a bit of housekeeping for today's webinar. Just to remind you all that today's webinar will be recorded and the slides will be made available following the webinar, so you will be able to access the material through our website after today's webinar. But without further ado, I'll now hand over to Brian Motherway, who will give an introduction to today's webinar.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, our welcome to everybody who's joining us from various parts of the world. We're very pleased that so many of you have shown an interest in this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from all of you during the discussion. And our particular thanks to Martin and Claire of DENEFF, who have agreed to lead today's webinar and tell us the experience from Germany on this topic, which I know is of interest to many countries and many businesses and governments around the world. And that is, how is digitalization changing energy efficiency, and how might it change it even more in the future? And some of you will know that this is the topic we're looking at in some detail here in the IEA at the moment under a program called Modernizing Energy Efficiency through Digitalization. And this is one of a series of webinars and other events that we are holding to explore this issue with our stakeholders around the world and discuss these questions about how energy efficiency is already changing with the advent of new digital technologies such as sensors, control, algorithms, smart meters, etc., and even more so how it might change in the future. And in particular, what opportunities do digital technologies create for greater levels of energy efficiency, both in end-use terms and also in wider system terms? And at our last webinar, we heard from the US Department of Energy, David Nemtsov, their lead buildings expert, talking about some of the many fascinating initiatives going on in the US at the moment. And today we're going to hear from another key country in this discussion, which is Germany. From our side, I just want to let you know that as part of the work we're doing on digitalization, some of you will have been with us a few weeks ago in Dublin at our 4th annual Global Energy Efficiency Conference, so where we had some nice discussions from governments and businesses on some of the issues that are emerging, including what are the opportunities for efficiency, but also what are the policy and regulatory responses required to get it right, both in terms of availing of those opportunities, but also avoiding situations where negative effects come to pass. At our conference in Dublin, we also launched a new online resource, which is available to all of you, and we hope you will access it and make use of it at the link on the screen now. We have a new digital library of case studies from around the world on how digitalization is already changing energy efficiency, and there's a lot of lessons learned there about what is becoming possible and what are the kind of policy and regulatory responses that governments need to consider in order to avail of these opportunities. I just want to let you know as well that in our Energy Efficiency Market Report 2019, which we will be releasing in just a couple of months' time, we will have a special feature on digitalization, looking at some of these opportunities and also, of course, drawing from the discussions we've been having over the course of the last year, including today's webinar. And as always, you're free to contact us at energy.efficiency@iea.org. If you'd like to share your experience, tell us about the work you're doing, ask us any questions that are on your minds, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. So other than that, I do hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and we look forward to continuing this discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Brian. So now we're going to pass over to Martin and Claire from DENEFF. So let's have Martin and Claire hopefully unmute themselves.
Yes, hello, this is Martin speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Martin. So as I said, just tell me when you want to advance the slides, and then we can progress from there, but it's over to you.
Yes, perfect. I think we can jump directly into it, and if you would like to open the next slide, that would be nice. Thank you very much. So first of all, we'd like to introduce ourselves a little bit. My name is Martin Bornhold. I'm one of the managing directors and co-founders of DENEFF, which is the German Business Initiative of Energy Efficiency. And my background is in communications at the Berlin Art School, and previously I've been working as a senior consultant at McKinsey & Company. Before that, I gathered some experience in other industries as well. And Claire?
I'm a manager for energy efficiency in industry at DENEFF. And before that, I was a researcher. I'm a political scientist working in programs for the German Federal Ministry for the Environment.
And now we can go to the next slide, please. And also, I'd like to introduce DENEFF shortly. For those of you who have never heard about DENEFF, which is actually quite likely, DENEFF is the strong voice for energy efficiency in Germany. DENEFF represents more than 170 businesses, front-running providers of energy efficiency solutions. So we are a members organization. And all these companies and businesses are coming from across the whole value chain of energy efficiency in industrial production, but also in buildings. Now we can go to the next slides. What are the goals for us of this webinar so far? So first of all, at the end of this webinar, we'd like to have provided you with some insights on how digitalization is beneficial for energy efficiency. We like to see that we have discussed and exchanged on actual experiences with you, what are the challenges and the good practices that you have in your country, but also, of course, in Germany. So we will present rather the German cases. And based on that, we'd like to have at the end some recommendations for policy and business leaders derived from the discussion as well. And now we can, I think, directly jump into the, into the first, content slide. So what's the basic theme of what we want to present today? So it's digitalization as an enabler for achieving our climate protection target. This is what we'd like to focus on. And but what we don't want to speak too much about today is the energy consumption increased by digitalization, for example, by data centers, etc. I think this is a very serious issue and a very important topic, but probably it would be worth an own IEA seminar. So we would rather like to focus on the chances of digitalization as an enabler for energy and CO2 reduction targets. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So Brian said that we want to see also what's the future and what does digitalization bring for energy efficiency. I have to admit in the very beginning, we don't know that either, but we have at least 3 theses for you how it could look like. So in the first thesis, I think everybody would agree on that digitalization is very fast and very big going on right now, and it is happening. And besides the increase of energy usage, it has also very big chances, and it's good because digitalization, from our perspective, is right now the only way to achieve our energy and climate targets. The second thesis is that it won't happen by itself. Politics must take action, and indeed we see first progresses have been made in energy efficiency policies, considering also digitalization, but and I think I won't reveal too much when I say I think there's still a lot of room for improvement as well. And the third thesis is that the effort is worth it because the reward is nothing less than the optimum of the energy system and better, cheaper, more attractive, faster and more convenient energy efficiency solution. And this is also a chance, of course, for the energy consumers, but it's also a chance for those businesses who actually provide and supply energy efficiency solution for increasing their business as well. So let's jump into the first thesis. So digitalization is coming, it's coming fast and it's coming big. Just to give you a little, sense and taste of how we basically thought in the past digitalization will proceed, and maybe this will also, help us to be humble on the projections of the digital future now. So Bill Gates in the year 1981 said that 640 kilobyte ought to be enough for anybody. So this was one of the future projections of the past. And if you skip to the next slide, we will see that this probably the increase of data volume generated per year and also exchanged per year will again tremendously increase in several areas by the factor of 10 between 2016 and 2025. So within 10 years, you probably see a data volume growth by a factor 10. And at the same time, we have a similar or a parallel development we can see is that we have globally decided to fight climate change and to significantly reduce CO2 emissions to stop global warming. And Germany alone has set a target of minus 95% CO2 until 2050. Our Chancellor Angela Merkel recently even said that Germany wants to become climate neutral by 2050, so more or less minus 100%. But no matters if it's minus 95 or minus 100% CO2, the progress in the last years has slowed down a lot within energy efficiency, but also with the CO2 reduction. So we see that we have very ambitious targets, but unfortunately at the moment, not that progress we need to get there within time. So it's more like a little bit like the snails you see on this picture. But, and this is the next slide, we hope that digitalization can be an accelerator for this progress of climate protection, like little rockets on the back of the snails. And on the next slide, yes, you see also that we believe that beside the examples we will show for business models and also for policy models, that digitalization will not only have effect on energy efficiency and the energy demand side, but it will have a positive effect and will be a precondition for an optimum of the whole system. So it will connect the production of energy with the storage and the transmission of energy, and the perfect match between energy supply and demand over time and over space. So there probably won't be a webinar about digitalization and energy without the word blockchain at this time, but I think blockchain is just a very small example on the whole big thing of creating a system optimum, and to create a system optimum between decentrally generated energy and decentrally consumed energy at totally different times and rooms. You need smart and communicating system to match this, actually. Yeah. So that leads us to the next thesis on policy, and here I would love to hand over to Claire, who's now taking the wheel now.
Thank you, Martin. So yes, our second thesis is politics must take action, and the first progress has already been made. So in this part on politics or policy, I will present the main barriers to energy efficiency that we have now, a quick overview of German policy instruments to address these barriers, and 3 examples of policy instruments that make use of digitalization to address these barriers. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of energy efficiency barriers that inhibit action. And what you see here are clusters of these barriers. So there's, for example, lack of information and awareness, and that are things like missing top management awareness for energy efficiency potentials, or lack of transparency of energy consumption. Or, for example, the cluster risks and lack of confidence could be a risk of sharing energy data with external actors. So, and effective energy policy must always address these barriers. So next slide, please. Here you see a non-comprehensive overview of German policy instruments. You see many of these are European. So some of these barriers that we have are being addressed, but many are not. Next slide, please. So we will present 3 examples of successfully, or hopefully in the future, successful policy instruments that use digitalization, or that touch digitalization to improve energy efficiency. We will present 2 funding programs and 1 change to the energy audit obligation for a non-SME that you probably all know. Next slide, please. You probably all know the famous phrase attributed to Kelvin: if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So the first instrument that we have is a funding program to make energy efficiency measurable. So yes, if it can be measured, it can hopefully be improved. And this funding program is for energy management hardware, but also software, and especially important, staff training. And we do know that energy management or energy efficiency can be an entry into digitalization, especially for SMEs, that's the case. So funding energy management is really important. Companies who want to use this program have to have an energy or environmental management system, or it must be in the process of certification. And this touches the barriers of lack of information and awareness, but also lack of financing. And if you want to look it up later, you see down on the slide, which will be shared with you, the link and the German name of this program, Energieeffizienz und Prozesswärme aus erneuerbaren Energien in der Wirtschaft, Modul 3. So yeah, you can look it up later if you're interested. Next slide, please. So the program I just presented was a more traditional funding program. So you make an investment, and then you receive a certain funding. The next example, the energy savings meter, is a new type of program, which consists of 2 elements. The first element is also a bit like traditional funding. Companies develop energy savings meters, systems which make it possible to measure energy efficiency, not only energy consumption. So the first element, which consists of 25% of the funding, is traditional funding for energy management software, hardware, and also training. And now the interesting and the new part of this program is that it's really results-based. 75% of the funding is paid ex post, so really based on the proven energy savings. So we think this is a really interesting new program. If you want to look it up, it's called Pilotprogramme Einsparzähler. I also put you the link in the slide, so you can look it up later. Next slide, please. So the third instrument that I present you is not really existing yet, but it hopefully will be, and I hope it will be very effective. So you probably know the EU Energy Efficiency Directive. Article 8 requires that all large companies, which means all non-SMEs, have to conduct an energy audit every 4 years. So this has to be implemented in all EU member states. And so far, the German implementation was very unsatisfactory. The responsible agency, which is called BAFA, carried out random samples, but they didn't really know how many companies had to do this, and compliance was also not so high. So in September, hopefully, a new law will be passed that obliges all non-SMEs to upload key results of their audits into an online portal. Data security is, of course, ensured. So these key results are things like the energy consumption, but also the measures and identified, and information about the economical viability of these measures. And we hope that this will bring a number of opportunities. First of all, it will, of course, improve compliance, because there will not only be random samples, but really every company will have to prove that there was an audit carried out. But also the data collected will be a good basis to improve future programs, policy programs, because then, politics will know which technologies are used, where is energy consumed within the companies. So it's really a data treasure. And also in the future, companies could be individually addressed with suitable programs. So this is the picture that you see here. It's like the Amazon principle. You have, the audit has shown you have an ineffective old pump. So here's the funding program for a new one, an energy efficient one. And if you want to look this up, there's no link because it doesn't exist yet, but it will be called Energiedienstleistungsgesetz. Next slide, please. So now it's your turn. Do you have any questions or comments? Or do you know any examples for policies that address the remaining barriers? Or also do you know examples of energy efficiency policies using digitalization? Please start already typing them into the system. So then later when we discuss together, we do know all your questions and comments and can answer them, or will know them. Next slide, please. So we have the learnings of this first part. How digitalization can improve energy efficiency policy. Big data in policy can lead to a better design and constant improvement of policy instruments, a better enforcement of regulations through inexpensive digital recording, like in the audit example, but also better marketing and dissemination of incentive-based instruments like subsidies. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So we are already in the third part of our webinar. The third thesis, that the effort is really worth it. Energy efficiency through digitalization can lead to better, cheaper, more attractive, faster, and also more convenient energy efficiency solutions. And this can then lead to, as Martin outlined, the optimal energy system. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a bit the mindset about energy efficiency, the energy efficiency market. To be successful, all solutions really need to be user-centric. Energy efficiency solutions should be as easy and convenient as possible to make them attractive for the user. And digitalization can help do that. Next slide, please. So what you see here is the value chain within the company, and large amounts of data and intelligent algorithms enable developing better, more efficient, and more attractive energy efficiency products and services, developing new business models, and also developing new marketing and sales channels. And yes, energy efficiency providers really should evaluate their entire value chain for options through digitalization, but also to really make every step as user-centric as possible. Next slide, please. So we have two examples that we will show you. One concerns product design, or really the customer benefits, and the other one concerns the sales, better sales through digitalization. So next slide, please. So we start with a company which is not a German example. It's not a German company. It's a US-American company, but we think it's a really good example for how to apply this. What they offer is energy efficiency for companies, also for industrial companies, and they offer really a one-stop shop. So they're not only offering energy consulting, but also implementation, installation, upkeep, and financing. They say their solutions are turnkey. And I think that's really an important factor, that it's very easy to use. You do not really, the customers don't have to search for someone who can then sell them or implement the solution after the, for example, energy audit, but it's all in one. And yes, as a first step, they offer free energy assessments, and yes, it's a really successful example. I hope there will be more companies like this in Europe soon as well. Next slide, please. The next example is for better sales. It's by KSB. KSB is a medium-sized German company. It's a pump manufacturer, and they have a new mobile phone app which is called the Sonolyzer. You can download it for free on your phone, and then you hold your phone next to the pump or other rotating equipment, and the app hears if it runs smoothly. So if the motor or if the pump runs smoothly. And if it runs smoothly, it means it also runs efficiently. And if it doesn't, this means you should probably call an energy consultant or maybe a KSB salesperson. So what do we learn from this solution? It's extremely convenient for the customers. It's for free. They really can just download it in a few seconds on their mobile phone. But of course, it's also really opens new markets. It's a good introduction to new customers for KSB. And it really has opened new business opportunities for these companies, because they saw, it's also, again, the big data subject, they saw where it was downloaded. It was very, very often downloaded in Latin America. So they went and opened went to the market there, which they wouldn't have done otherwise. So it was very successful for them. Next slide. It's again the same procedure. Do you have any questions or comments? Do you know examples for better energy efficiency products based on digitalization? Or do you know examples of new business models? Again, please type your questions and comments and experiences into the comment field. Next slide, please. So our recommendations to make the most of digitalization for energy efficiency, for the energy efficiency market, are to policy leaders that they should be careful. Policy interventions can be really harmful to innovation. Policy leaders should mainly provide the necessary infrastructure, standards for interfaces and protocols and data security, and they really should fund research for energy efficiency and digitalization. And business leaders should systematically apply the digitalization strategy along the entire energy efficiency value chain, and they should make their products and services entirely user-centric. That's our recommendation. So next slide. It's Martin again.
Yes, hello everybody, it's me again. And before we start, I think before we start the discussion on the questions mentioned before, I'd like to invite you all to see how these new business models, but maybe also new policy systems are developed live. So we'd like to invite you to the next Energy Efficiency Hackathon. It's in Berlin, and it's on March 22-23rd, where almost 200 young people from all over Europe and even from all over the world come to Berlin and develop new solutions, innovations based on digital technologies to boost energy efficiency in the future markets. Having said that, I'd like to invite you now to open the discussion. Again, maybe I repeat the questions, and I think then we hand over back to the moderator. So first, on the policy part, the questions have been whether you know examples of policies that fill in the blank and address the remaining barriers. And the second question was, do you know examples of energy efficiency policies that are somehow tied to digitalization, that use, so have you seen policymakers, have you seen policies that use digitalization to make, energy efficiency programs better or more effective? So we really like to learn from you and from your experiences as well. I mean, we have shown some examples for Germany, but I'm very sure that there's a lot more out there where everybody can learn from. And on the market side, we've seen that in digitalization can, increase the business, can create new business, even completely new business models. So what have you seen there on the side of digitalization? Where has digital approaches helped to overcome barriers for investors and for users to do energy efficiency? And do you know examples of new business models, new technologies, new products, or where some companies did this along the value chain? And because, as you have seen, at the end, we always have to think about Homer Simpson being one of our energy efficiency customer. So how can we use digitalization to make even Homer Simpson save energy, who is really sleepy and really not interested in energy efficiency itself? But how can we still make him saving energy? I think this is a big question in the field of energy efficiency businesses and markets. Yeah, so, and I'd like to hand over now back to the moderator, and then we can start a hopefully fruitful and insightful discussion. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Martin, and thank you, Claire, for that presentation. We've already got quite a number of questions and comments that have come through, so thank you very much to all those people that have sent those. I think we've got so many that we won't be able to get through all of them, but we'll do our best. There was a question, the first one at the very start of the webinar. It was probably more of a question to the IEA about what is the expected or most likely scenario in terms of the increase in energy consumption. Assumably that's linked to the increased use of digital technologies. We did a study at the IEA looking at this, and we published that in 2017, called Digitalisation and Energy. You can download that for free from the IEA website, iea.org/digital. One of the conclusions that we made is that it is very difficult to clearly identify or clearly allocate an impact on energy use to digital technology and digitalisation in general. That's because obviously there's a lot of potential to save energy by smarter devices, but there are also potential rebound effects. The one rebound effect that was highlighted in the report, for example, was autonomous vehicles. So if we were to say have more autonomous vehicles, there is a potential for energy use to halve or double, depending upon the way in which they're taken up. So there is a bit of uncertainty, and it is an active area of research that we have going on at the moment. We've also published some analyses looking at the impact of data centres on energy use, and also more recently on Bitcoin mining as well. And again, you can find those on the IEA website. So that's a comment there in relation to that. Now, I think a question for Martin and Claire. The first one is in relation to the energy audits and the energy audits that are required under Article 8 of the Energy Efficiency Directive in Europe, and in relation to the digital recording of those energy audits. The question is whether the digital recording of energy audits is public and whether it is compatible with confidentiality concerns that might be linked to, I suppose, issues of competition within European industry. So I don't know if you had any comments about digital recording of energy audits.
Yes, thank you to the person who asked this question. The law is not passed yet, so we do not really know exactly how it will be, but of course it will be compatible with data protection law, and also the results will not be public. They are really only for the use of the agency and the policymakers. If they will be published, it will be anonymously.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. The next question that we had went to, I suppose, the skills within industry within Germany. And the question was, do you find that German SMEs, small and medium enterprises, have the in-house knowledge to take advantage of some of the programs that you mentioned in your presentation? Or is there a skill gap that prevents some of these programs being taken up by SMEs? So, do you feel that the SMEs in Germany have a good internal skill set to take advantage of the, I suppose, the assistance and the programs that are available to them?
Mm-hmm. So maybe there are two parts of the answer. So the first part is, do the programs or the products, so the governmental programs or the new like Lime Energy and so on, new offers address these SME as a customer. And I think this is what we try to say with the Homer-Simpson picture. Of course, we have to make the programs and the products in a way that SMEs, even if they have a low skill level, can use them. But of course, every SME managing director has an internet account and knows the basic things on internet and Facebook and and Outlook and so on. So he has basic skills, of course. But if we use digitalization, digitalization of policy programs and digitalization of products should always make it easier for the customer to use and to save energy and to use the solution and not make it more complicated. But that's a design question. That's the question, how do I design my policy program? How do I design my offer, my product offer? Digitalization must make a product and a program easier to use. And on the other hand side, we see a lot of potential for SMEs on the other hand side to offer energy efficiency solutions. So, for example, the example of the pump manufacturer, it's a medium-sized company. I mean, it's an internationally acting and very active company, pump company, but it's a mid-sized company. And they realized that they need to or found some good ideas in the field of digitalization to make their product, for example, their sales channels and their marketing more effective than they have been before. And digitalization was the key to that. And I think there are many, many more examples and many, many more opportunities for SMEs to actually exploit that. When we ask our members, who are mainly SMEs, who they believe are the drivers for step changes through digitalization, then honestly they said it's probably not the SME market, but it's rather startups or the big digital companies like Google and Apple and so on who drive the change. But SMEs are very adaptive to cooperate in that ecosystems with startups, with universities, and also even with the big digital companies, and use these skills and combine it with their own, very solid and traditional and but very solid business models. So it's rather that they see a role in that ecosystem to profit from digitalization without driving the digitalization. Was this understandable? The two parts of the answer?
That was very good, Martin. I think, in relation to the first part of your answer about, making sure that the incentive or the policy instrument can be understood and can be taken up by SMEs, I think that's obviously a very valid point. Whenever we at the IEA talk with policymakers and we discuss the topic of incentive-based policies, it's always an important aspect of design choice about understanding the motivations of the companies or the individuals that you want to target the incentive towards. Because if you don't design the incentive properly and it doesn't appeal to the motivations of the end users that you're looking to target, then the impact will be a lot less than what had been hoped. So it's a very important point, and it was obviously very well made and as well. We have a question here about the energy efficiency meter, obviously an interesting innovation that's coming out of Germany. Just the question is in relation to the savings, and in particular, how are the savings verified across different pieces of hardware and software? In other words, how do you ensure that results from different pieces of technology are comparable? So maybe a bit of a technical question there, if you're able to give any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so maybe I try to give half of the answer, and Claire, maybe you can add up on that. So the basic idea is in that program, and I think the revolutionary thing is that the first program a little bit comparable, like a feed-in tariff for saved kilowatt hours, to pay the full amount on subsidies based on the saving results. Okay, so this is the revolutionary part. The second new thing about that is that the subsidy is not taken by the energy consumer, by the household or by the factory owner or whoever, but the subsidy is taken by the provider of measurement and verification of energy management systems, for example, or of those who do actually the measurement. Yeah, so he is responsible for installing the hardware, responsible for installing the software, and responsible for motivating his client to actually save energy by whatever. Yeah, so it doesn't matter how the energy is saved. At the end, it's just important that within the metering system, yeah, and that's important. It's not metering the consumption; it's metering the savings compared to baseline, etc., etc. And then the system itself does not. It can. There are meters that actually can nail it down to single technologies, but at the end, it's just important how much energy was saved, and the meter does not usually not differentiate. Is it saved by a new fridge or by an LED? That the meter does not take this into account usually. And incentivized is that you have a meter which is actually measuring not consumption but energy savings, and that you get the full subsidy only if there have been successful savings measured. And these savings then again are or are supposed to be transferred also to a central database at the central government, so that the government again gets more smart and more intelligent on what kind of measures you have and what kind of savings to see and so on. And this is the whole idea, to develop hardware and software that measures energy savings and only give subsidies if actually savings are measured, if there are savings. If there are no savings, you only get a base load of money, but not the full amount of money.
Thanks, Martin. Claire, did you want to add anything to what Martin just mentioned then?
No, I think Martin perfectly explained how it works.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent, very, very thorough. That's great. The next question we have is a little bit broader than just digitalisation in the industry sector, and it's in some cases about awareness raising, and it's actually a question about creation of awareness beyond, I suppose, the industry sector, and about primary and secondary schools in general. So about people learning in schools and developing and obviously becoming the workforce of the future. I suppose the first question from a German perspective is, do you have initiatives underway in Germany to improve the education of young people in relation to, first of all, energy efficiency, and then two, do you see that the digitalisation component of this is also being incorporated into any potential policies or programs to increase knowledge for young people?
Can I try to repeat the question how I understood it? So you want to know if there are specific programs to teach young people, A, on energy efficiency, and B, on digitalization, and how to combine these two things?
Yes, that's right, Martin.
Okay. Well, there are definitely a certain amount of, first of all, as probably many other countries as well, education in Germany is state responsibility. It's not a central government thing. Okay, that's important to know and to understand. And I know that probably in some of the 16 German states, it's definitely part, of the curriculum, yeah. To different extents and in different ways, but I think more or less in every state, it's at some point in the school, it's a topic. On top of that, there are some central programs. For example, there's a big competition by the German government, the German Ministry of Environment, on who's the best or the most innovative climate school. So the schools can apply like all over Germany, and the best schools then win a prize. And there are, of course, then local winners and general winners and so on. The agency who's actually conducting that is CO2 online. So if you Google that, you can see that the competition. And I think there's even from a private sector initiative by Allianz Insurance. You probably know it's a big German insurance company. They have a similar program incentivizing schools to have a competition on the best climate action ideas within schools. To bring this together, there are a lot of more things. One specific project that came into my mind to bring together digitalization, energy management, and the translating into the climate topic is by a German company called ISTA. ISTA is they do like heating measurements, because by German law tenants have the right to have a specific measurement on their heat consumption in every room. And so ISTA is providing the measurement hardware and software for that, and they have now introduced also a wide school program to increase the awareness within schools and within pupils, how much energy the school is using, and how it could be reduced. And then they have also a little competition and some example schools they work together with, and they sponsor the schools to reduce the energy consumption, mainly in the heat part. Yeah, this is what came to my mind so far.
That's great, Martin. That was very, I suppose it was a bit of a curly question, but it was one that I think you handled very well. Going back now, I suppose, to the digitalisation thing more precisely. This is a quite a detailed question, but one I think that's got a lot of interesting discussion to be had about. Is on the one hand, we're talking about open data, so ensuring that more people have access to energy data to enable better analysis, better opportunities to improve energy efficiency. But on the other hand, there's also security and privacy concerns which need to be respected. The question goes really to what kind of policy interventions do we see as being required to ensure that the right data is available in order to obviously improve low carbon innovation while protecting individuals or organisations' security and privacy. So do you have any thoughts from the DENEFF perspective on how to balance the desire for more data while still protecting people's privacy and confidentiality?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if I may again, because this is a very general question. Well, as you said, it's as many things in life. There's a little bit of paradox on the one hand side. We want to have a lot of data because we believe more data can improve the world. On the other hand, more data increases also a risk. So it's a lot of data is always a risk and an opportunity at the same time. And I think that's exactly the job of policymakers, to find the equilibrium between the demand for security and for privacy on the one hand side, but also, you know, there's a public good and a public demand for climate protection and for energy efficiency and renewable energy, etc., that only can be improved with more data. So, and I think there's no general answer on that, but I think we should never kill the opportunity discussion always with the word privacy or data protection, because if you look into the specific cases or use cases, very often it's not a black or white answer. Very often you see, I give you an example. Yeah, when we have the Einsparzähler, so the saving meters, it's for industry SMEs, but it's also for big dwelling units, for multi-dwelling units, for residential buildings. Yeah, and when they said, okay, you can measure the energy saved in that residential building with the saving meter. Like, all the people said, oh no, this is privacy, we will never be able, all the tenants want to have. Yeah, but we don't need, or the company who does that, they don't need the single room data of a tenant for measuring the savings, and also he does not need that data for give very good advices on how to improve the heating system in that building. He is fully fine with the aggregated total overall building data, which has nothing to do with privacy anymore, because it's not related to a single person or to a single household, but it's aggregated data from the system, from the heating system at a whole. Yeah, for example. And so I think we'd really like to have a very differentiated discussion on what data do we actually need, and you know, how do we balance the different demands, but please do it on a case-on-case discussion and not with a general answer.
Great, thanks, Martin. That was again a very detailed and good response to that. We are still having some questions come in, and we do have a bit more time for the discussion, but please feel free to continue to raise any questions or any other suggestions or comments that you had. We do have a couple of examples here about some policies and programs that are looking to encourage the adoption of digital technologies and the benefits of digitalisation. Both of them are actually coming from Canada. So the first example is of, I think, a program or its engagement platform called MyHeat. It's the person that's put this comment in is saying that it's an easy to implement digital engagement platform, and it shows thermal attributes of homes and businesses to encourage energy saving change in consumers. So I think, I mean, based on that example, Martin, I mean, from the view of DENEFF, I mean, this is obviously a very a way to show more data and more insights to the energy user about how to improve energy efficiency. In your experience, when you provide the energy user with more data and more information, do you find that that then leads to greater energy efficiency when they have just more information and more detailed information available to them? Or do they also need some help understanding the data, but also understanding what actions they can take to improve energy efficiency? Did you have any views about that?
I have a view on that. But first of all, I really like that you mentioned MyHeat, because MyHeat is also a member of DENEFF, and they're doing a great job together with a couple of other startups. For example, here with the Berlin state-owned real estate, they roll out now. They have a very innovative program to, encouraging and supporting startups with digital solutions for example, police stations and fireman stations and so on and so on. And I think it's a good example. And to answer your question, to go back to your question, I think it's a first step, but you cannot say that transparency and more information always is good for all consumers. I think in that part, for example, when we take MyHeat and take, for example, it's a city of Berlin owning the buildings, they have a professional energy manager, and he's really keen on that data because it's his profession, it's his job to read the data, to understand it, to get maybe good tips also from MyHeat and then to act on that. But this is an exception. Most people and most companies and most private consumers are rather like Homer Simpson. They do not care about information. They have way too much information at all, daily on their cell phones and in the internet, and it's hundreds of millions of information. But what they need is assistance. So they need somebody taking care of their CO2 footprint and their energy consumption, and doing that in the background and with very less intervention. And I think this will be the next step. I mean, for example, take heat control systems or light control systems. The first innovation role in the field of digitalization was, we provide transparency. Then the second was, okay, we provide control. So he has an app and he can put his heating system on and off from somewhere else, or the LEDs. And then they realized that people actually don't want to, they don't really care about that. So the next wave of innovation in the field of digitalization, I think, is automation. So based on the systems are learning, they learn how the consumers and the customers, their habits, what they want, what's the best temperature they want to have, and how they act when they're at home and when they're not at home, and they adopt automatically without an intervention required by the consumer. And I think that's the future. Very intelligent systems that do not bother and annoy the energy consumer, but just save energy in the background.
Great, thanks, Martin.
I would like to add this, because in companies it's a bit different, of course. Many companies have energy managers, and if they don't, they at least have a person who is responsible for energy. So these persons, maybe they are sometimes also Homer Simpsons, but they know a bit more about energy efficiency, and they also are able to understand more of the data. But also for them, it's really important that the providers provide exactly the needed data, and not too much, not too detailed, but still enough to make improvements. And we have one project which we are just finishing, which is called Energy Performance Indicators Connect, NP Connect, where energy performance indicators were introduced into a big laundry, which had 8 washers. And most of them are the same type, but the energy efficiency of each of these washers is now being monitored, and they found out that the efficiency is very different. So now, if they go low on laundry to wash, they know in which order they use the washers and in which they don't. So without having to invest, they save a lot of money, and so there it's very useful for them to have this data. It really, like Martin said, it depends on the cases. But I think companies or professional users need more data than the private consumer.
Excellent, thanks, Claire. And I certainly think that that's a valid point that you make there about the need for data. Another example that has come through again from Canada, this time from the West Coast, from BC Hydro, just mentioning about an energy efficiency program or a new product that's being launched with an Italian medium-sized company who has developed what they are referring to as a plug-and-play solution for refrigerators, so coolers and freezers, that allows them obviously, hopefully, to understand their energy use data and optimize and improve performance. The savings have been identified, real energy savings of about 19%, plus an improvement in refrigeration efficiency, with also some applications for air conditioning, and that's obviously, as the IEA has shown, the largest growing source of electricity demand globally is space cooling and air conditioning. And a potential, we've got here a mention about a potential German pilot project, but that's potentially something that the person that asked that question might be able to follow up with DENEFF directly. But I want to come back in this example here to the idea that it's coming from, I suppose, a support of a utility, in this case, BC Hydro. And obviously throughout the United States and in parts of Canada, they have what we call obligation schemes, where utilities are required to make investments or obtain a certain amount of energy savings through improvements in energy efficiency. And I suppose a question for DENEFF on this is whether or not you see there is a role potentially for utilities who have access to end users, to energy users, to actually assist them to adopt digital technology and maybe understand that digital technology better to improve energy efficiency. So, I mean, just to, I suppose, to summarise that question, do you see there as being a potential role for energy utilities in digitalisation and energy efficiency?
Yes, thank you for this question. Yes, we think there is a big potential for utilities to save energy with their customers. We also have a few utility companies which are members in DENEFF and which are really strong in energy savings, energy efficiency, because they know their customers best. So I think it's a good option. Policy so far does not support this so much. In other countries, for example, we know there are white certificates. We do not have a system like this here. So if utilities do this, it's because they want to keep their customers happy, or they see it's a new business field. Some understand that their business models have to shift from only selling kilowatt hours to also selling safe kilowatt hours. But I think it's a bit less than in other countries where there are this policy support like white certificates or other systems. Martin would like to add something?
Yes, exactly. So we don't have energy saving obligation schemes or resource standard schemes or whatever, which we've seen like in Denmark or UK or US and many states of the US, etc. So that kind of policy and regulation really fosters and increase the role of utilities. But as Claire mentioned, we've seen that in Germany, a couple of innovative front-running utilities started with offers and with products and services to their customers, either end customers like consumers or mainly also business customers, to become, more or less an energy service company instead of just an energy company, energy selling company. So they did that. Some have been more successful with that, others less. I think it's a journey for all of them, but what we see is that many of them actually started cooperating with startups or with former startups, like Termondo, for example, does a lot of white label solutions for utilities, or the Mannheim MBV, they bought an energy management company to promote that product among their customers, because the big asset of utilities is that they have consumer contacts, and they have energy consumption data. I think these are the big two assets. And I think the more or less thing to learn and the journey they can do in that field is that they have not, in the past, at least in Germany, not been, I mean, everybody, just needed the utility, and they just, they did not have to do hard marketing and hard sales, because it was more or less, energy was a product that was sold anyways without, big effort. And now the customers get more and more demanding, and they know, how an Apple or Google works and looks like, and they more and more expect that experience also from their energy supplier. And then energy efficiency and energy services could be a good entry for utilities to start also the digital, or to continue, or even get better on their digitalization journey as well.
Great, thanks, Martin. Yes, I think we certainly agree, obviously, that the utilities and the foot in the door that they have with their consumers offers a very good opportunity to help to increase the uptake of these digital technologies that can have a very big impact. This is a question in relation to the Lime case study that was presented, that Claire talked about. The question is probably more of a clarification, is in relation to Lime, do you know whether their offer really covers every step in the process, in that all the company has to do is actually contract with Lime and then they will take care of the rest? So a question of clarification there about the Lime case study that Claire talked about.
Well, we hope so. We haven't really spoken to their customers yet, so we do not really know. But Martin wants to say something. So if they don't, I think it would be a good example. But yes, I think they offer all steps.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so for us, Lime was just an example on how new business models in the field of industrial production, or also in businesses could work, as a one-stop shop. This was just an example how exactly in depth all the contracts and the customer relations work. We honestly we don't know a lot into the depth, but the general business model, I think, was very impressive, so that we want to bring that up and show that this could shift, from just being an energy consultant to actually being an energy implementator, an energy saving one-stop shop. That sounded to us very interesting. In Germany, we have a similar business model, but it's rather on the residential heating market, where there is, for example, Termondo, who introduced a fully digitalization value chain and became #1 heating installer within a couple of years, within 2 or 3 years, just by being consequently and radically customer-centric and digital within the processes. And they more or less, they came to a market which was really like the craftsmen. They've been like really non-digital and really, old-fashioned, and they revolutionized that business. But we wanted to bring a similar example also from the commercial part, from the business customer side, and there we've heard about the Lime business model, which is very impressive, because they do really big scale. Start with audits, and then, but also don't stop with the audit, but then really implementing the measures as well, and financing it, and and I think that's they guarantee savings, even, I think, as far as I can remember, and I think this is a very good thing. And one more business model to mention, if we talk about one-stop shops, but in the field of buildings, is a Dutch model that was now adopted also by Germany, and was here also funded by the German government, is Energiesprong. So their idea is to prefabricate, the whole a new building envelope with building technology included in the envelope, and with a solar roof, and they fabricate it in a factory, and then they deliver it to the old house, and then they just install it around the old house. They more or less install a new house, which is prefabricated and also fully digitalized and automated. And there is a company that brings that model now to the German market. It's called EcoWorks, and they won, by the way, also the Perpetuum 2019, which is our Energy Efficiency Innovation Award of DENEFF. I think that's another example for this whole thing, one-stop shop, making it easier to the customer to save energy. And yeah, by the way, one thing to add, of course, at the last slide, you see our contact data. So whenever there are more questions or something unclear at the end, we're very, very happy to answer your question. Just drop us an email or call us. Claire and I are happy to answer as well.
Yes, and of course, by the way, we will award the Perpetuum next year as well. So if you have a really interesting energy efficiency innovation, you can send me an email and I will send you in autumn all the details you need to apply for this award.
Excellent, thanks guys. And I think, I mean, you mentioned a couple of examples, and we actually had another example that came in during your answer there from South Africa about the South African ESCOM model, and this is using ESCOs or energy service companies to handle the energy savings obtained by customers. So effectively making it easier for the customer to understand opportunities to improve energy efficiency, and obviously reducing a lot of the transaction costs from them. So that's another good example there from South Africa. We had an interesting question here that came through about the relationship between innovation and policy intervention. So the question is, if policy interventions can harm innovation, how can we make sure that the right innovations are being implemented? So I suppose this is a question really about the role of government in making policy interventions and wanting to encourage innovation. But do you at DENEFF have any thoughts about how government policy can be developed such that the right innovations are being made and are being implemented to the market?
Yes, of course we do. We think that interventions really must be carefully made, because they can do more harm than good. It's really important that policy provides the infrastructure and the political framework sets standards. For example, if there wasn't eco-design, motors and so on would be much less energy efficient than they are now. We think it's also important that policy funds research for energy efficiency and digitalization, but we think it's really important that they are technologically open, that they do not decide to fund one technology, but that they set the goals and then the market can decide how to get there.
And if I may to add on that, I think there are two learnings we had recently, and I think I observed something similar at the IEA conference in Dublin a couple of days ago. I think the role of policymakers to foster and I see sometimes in the discussion a little bit the danger that policymakers say, well, the whole climate issue will be resolved by innovation. So we don't have to get our hands dirty on some regulation because innovation will save the world. And we strongly believe that this won't happen, and I think also the panel of CEOs made that very clear at the session in Dublin. Policymakers, we see, maybe we are wrong, but this is at least the feedback we got. I see them in that field of innovation in two roles. The first is create infrastructure. So infrastructure means make sure, I mean, on a very top level, that there is fast, high-speed internet available to everybody. That's a precondition for digitalization. But the second thing is also make, like with the Einsparzähler or with the module 3 on energy management systems, install as much measurement and control systems for all energy-related things as possible, and fund that and support that, because this is the infrastructure for a smart and intelligent, like smart meters as well, and this is the infrastructure, the precondition for a smart energy system and for system optimum. That's the one side, the infrastructure side. But the other side is, from our perspective, that if there is no regulatory push for saving energy and reducing CO2, there is no market demand, or only very little demand, or too slow demand. Yeah, it's definitely CO2 reduction is not a demanded and asked for good in the market right now, or even saving energy. I mean, even though it's a market in itself, but it's not that fast and that to that extent we need it for solving the climate crisis. So if you really want innovation grow, rather create a demand for CO2 reduction, create a demand for energy reduction through strong and strict policies, and then innovation will do the rest, because then, you know, this will stimulate the market to come up with very smart and cool and fast and well-working ideas to actually fulfill this demand. But there is right now not a sufficient and high enough demand for CO2 reduction and for energy reduction, that innovation will always happen where there's a big demand, a big push, a big pressure for something new, and policymakers must create that.
Thank you, Martin and Claire, for that. I suppose a follow-on from that question, you mentioned obviously the market demand for CO2 reduction and obviously improving energy efficiency. In your experience at DENEFF in working with industry and working with companies who also work with industry, what do you see as the major, I suppose, selling point of these sort of digital technologies that encourage or lead to industry adopting them? Do you see that energy efficiency is a major selling point, or at the moment, without, as you sort of said, that really strong market for CO2 reductions, do you actually see that there's other business factors that industry, I suppose, industry sees as more valuable in deciding whether or not to adopt digital technologies?
So I have to drop out at this point because I have to rush to my next obligation. But Claire will answer that question and all the following questions very competently, I think. And I want to thank you all for listening to us, and particularly to you and to Brian for organizing this webinar, and to Eileen. And so I'm out, but Claire is still in. So bye-bye.
Thank you, Martin.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your participation today. And Claire?
Yes, I'm still here. I
Yes.
don't have to leave. So I'm happy to answer this question. Thank you for this interesting question. I think it really depends, because it depends on the political framework, like Martin said, but I think it's also, of course, energy efficiency is an important factor in selling the solutions. But really, I think it's important that the companies that provide the solutions also inform their customers about the multiple benefits. And I really appreciate the work IEA has done to make these, first to discover these multiple benefits, but also to make them more known, the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. But there are things like, of course, cost reduction, but also things like predictive maintenance, or saving even on the staff bills, because there's less extra hours that have to be worked due to less incidents, and many more things that are related to energy efficiency investments that are as important. That's one side. And the other side, I think it's really important to explain the benefits more directly really to the right groups within the companies. So because that's one thing we touched a little bit before, there are energy managers who really working on energy efficiency, but very often, especially in bigger companies, they're not the ones who take the decisions. So who make the investment decisions. So it's really important to address these people the managing directors in smaller companies, or yes, the buyers by, for example, not only outlining the energy savings that could be made by a specific investment, but also really just convert it into euros and write how much, or not only euros in money, and in currencies, how much money could be saved by this investment. I think that's really important as well.
Certainly, Claire. And I think, as you said, the ability to translate energy efficiency, so energy savings or other maybe health or maintenance benefits, into cost savings and cost benefits is very much an important important step in encouraging industry to adopt digital technologies and energy efficiency more broadly. We have an interesting example that's come through from the Ghana Energy Commission. So just showing you how international our reach has been today. It's just giving an example of how digitalisation is used to assist with the import of appliances. So not necessarily linked to industry, but more of an energy efficiency point in general. And it notes that digitalisation is being used to assist with the harmonisations of imports of appliances and also regulation. So in the case in the example that's been given here from Ghana, is that once an importer obviously receives a product that will be sold into the market in Ghana, is able to describe the appliance to obviously a computer application, and then the system will automatically refer that inquiry or that description to the regulator in Ghana, who will then verify whether approval for the sale of the appliance in the country has been given. And some of the things I mentioned here are refrigerators, air conditioners, and lighting systems. So that's an example of where you're able to use digital technology and the ability to quickly cross-check information to make the implementation and the verification of compliance with energy efficiency regulations easier. So that's a nice example there from Ghana. We are, I think, just a few minutes away from the end of the webinar, and we did have one question that I think is hopefully a nice opportunity for DENEFF to promote themselves, and that is, how can people participate in the energy efficiency hack? So in the energy efficiency hack, how can people participate in that, Claire?
So the easiest is to drop us a line at hack@deneff.org. The slides that will be uploaded will be updated, and the email address will be included. So you can write an email to hack@deneff.org. The participation is free for the young people, for the students who participate. It's not free for the companies who provide challenges for this hack, of course. So yes, it will take place on the 22nd and 23rd of March. And you can also just write me or Martin an email, better me maybe. And I will give you the information on what to do then.
Great, thanks, Claire. And obviously, if there is anybody on the line from Germany, or who can get to Germany to participate in the hack, it's obviously a great opportunity to understand the power that data can have in identifying opportunities to improve energy efficiency, and obviously a great opportunity to share a bit of innovative spirit and that kind of thing as well. I think that was about it in terms of some of the major questions and comments that we had here today. So I suppose from us, and just to reiterate, we will be uploading the slides. We will make a few amendments to them so that we have all the information there, in particular about the energy efficiency hack, as Claire just said. That will be available on the IEA website, and also the audio from today's webinar will also be available. From us, I just first of all like to thank again Claire and Martin from DENEFF for participating in today's webinar. Obviously, the presentation slides were incredibly informative, and also your willingness to participate in the question and answer session. There were some pretty detailed questions that the participants threw at you today, but you did very well in answering them all. So well done to that. And just from my side, in addition to Brian Motherway, who participated today, I'd also just like to acknowledge Eileen Huang, who did a lot of the work behind the scenes to make sure that today's webinar could happen. She's actually been the one for some of you who's been talking to you via the chat boxes and that kind of thing in the webinar app. So thank you to Eileen for her work today. Claire, I'll pass the floor over to you if you wanted to make any other final comments for today.
Yes, I would also like to thank the audience for listening and also for the really interesting questions and especially the experiences that you shared. I will really look into them. I took notes. And I would like to thank, yes, you and Brian, but also especially Eileen, and for making this webinar possible. It was really fun. Yes, thank you all.
Great, thank you, Claire. And as we said, everything will be uploaded to the IEA website. And we thank you all again for your participation in today's webinar. Thank you very much.